I want to welcome Brian Ostler to our podcast today. Now, this is really an amazing connection. So, Brian lived just a block away from the Bertchold family, and he was one of our dearest friends in the neighborhood, in the hood, at school. I mean, I've known Brian for so many years, and it came to my attention that he was very close friends, best friends with Robert Bertchold's oldest son, Jerry, and of course spent many hours and much time at their home. And as all of us, played together in the neighborhood, he said he had some interesting perspectives. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to have Brian Ostler, who lives in Denver, Colorado. He's an architect now, but back in the day when we were all in fifth grade, and that was about the time that the Bertcholds moved into the neighborhood. And so, Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Jan. I'm really happy to do this for you in your
Yeah.
podcast here. What I'd like, let me tell you how long I've known Jan. Let me kind of set this whole stage up. Jan and I were together in school from first grade all the way through ninth grade, and then I went to a different high school than she did, and I'll tell you how all this happened. Now, if you people in podcast land here, if you go to Google Maps and you go to Pocatello, Idaho, and then you go to the Holt Arena,
Mm-hmm.
right by Idaho State University, all of these people lived within 3 blocks of the Holt Arena. Jan lived on 16th Place. We'll talk about this. The first time I met Jan, my best friend at that time was named Darren Ravston. Do you know Darren
Oh,
Ravston?
gosh.
You remember
Darren was
Darren,
my
correct?
first love in first grade.
Okay, there you go. Darren and I used to stop by Jan's house on the way home, and we would talk to you, and your sisters would say things from, because we're in first grade, so the sisters are younger, and there's saying things from the windows and so
It's
forth.
true.
So Jan lives on 16th. Darren lives on 17th. Jerry, when they moved in, lived on 18th. I lived on 19th. It's all right there by the Holt Arena.
Yep.
Now, uh, so what happens is we're so see Darren Ravston moves away after first
Right.
grade. He moves up on to the west side of Pocatello uh, by a junior high, Irving Junior High. There's only 4 junior highs in this town. There's, I don't know, maybe 20 elementary
Mm-hmm.
schools, 4 junior highs, and there were 2 high schools. Now there's 3 high schools. So I've known Jan since we were 6 years old, and Jan may have even been 5 at the time because you were one of the youngest
I
in the
was.
class. But here's what I remember the most. I so I'm LDS, Jan's LDS. The rest of my friends are not. Well, Darren was. The rest of them were not until Jerry moved into the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Because we
So
had we
my
had quite an
congregation,
eclectic neighborhood. I mean, because we were by the university, it wasn't like everybody was LDS. Everybody was not Church of
that's
Jesus Christ of
correct.
Latter-day Saints. There were tons of people that were Catholic, and some of our close friends in our very neighborhood were like, there were a bunch of different churches just in our immediate area: the Presbyterian Church, the
That's
Methodist Church, the
correct.
Greek Orthodox Church. There was a lot of variety. So yeah.
There was a lot, and the reason is because Idaho State is a college town, and also it's a town where by the nuclear site in
Hmm.
Idaho. So, and you have a very high percentage of parents who are very well educated, who are teaching or who are engineering nerds, and they go to work out at the nuclear site. It was a very well educated town. A town of 50,000, you would not see that type of high education very often whatsoever. And the other thing is, back in the 70s, they actually used Pocatello, Idaho a lot for marketing. They would test things. Like Pringles potato chips were tested in Pocatello, Idaho as one of the first testing spots because of the diversity of the people that were there. because there was a lot of different ones that were there. Now, you couldn't really test things like, alcoholic products and so forth, because there's too many LDS people that would not drink alcohol. But anything else was pretty much a very good marketing spot for Pocatello. They would use Pocatello to do this. Now, back to growing up, Jerry moves into the neighborhood between fourth and fifth grade. Is that correct, Jan? Okay, summer between fourth and fifth. Okay, so here's what's going on. In the LDS congregation that I went to, was not the same one as Jan's. I was the only boy my age. So we're getting to the point where I'm almost, and I was the only boy from 3 years old all the way through 12 years old. And there was like 9 girls. It was really crazy.
And it's
So
interesting
by
because
the
I
time
was
I'm
the only
11,
girl my age in my ward in the primary and young men's and young women's program. Always. There was not another girl that was my age. There were girls just a year younger or a year older. Interesting.
yep, same here. That's
Yep.
very crazy. So what they did, they should have shipped you to my ward and me to your
Exactly.
ward. So what happened is we have this thing called primary. It's kind of like the kids get together, and it used to be during the week. And by the time I was 11, my mother went and told the
The teachers.
ones that ran the
Yeah.
primary, the teachers of the primary, look, we got to do something about this. Let's let him go to the other ward during the week. Because otherwise, what are you going to do? The girls are going to be talking about coming of age things, and what's he going
Right.
to do? It's not good for him. It's not good for them. So they shipped me over to your
Yep.
ward.
So a ward is
And
like a
that's
little
where I met
parish. Like
Jerry.
that's just in case
Yeah,
anybody
a
doesn't know, it's a
congregation.
congregation. But
It's a
yeah.
congregation. So that's where I meet Jerry, right about the start of fifth grade. And we're in the same class at Washington. We all went to Washington Elementary School. It's still there. You'll see it on 10th Avenue and Lewis in Pocatello, Idaho. So here we are, our fifth grade. They do something different in that school. And remember, Jan, everybody was in the
Yeah, it
same
was a
class.
great big gigantic,
instead of being
like the whole floor was the classroom.
yes, we had a huge classroom, and there were 3 teachers, and I believe the head teacher was Christensen, and then there was a
Yep.
Bollinger and an
Yep.
Isham.
And they were some of my favorite teachers of all time. I love
Yes,
Mrs. Bollinger. And Mrs.
yes,
Isham.
exactly. She was the dark-haired
Yep.
one. Isham was the blonde,
Yep.
the platinum blonde lady. Okay, so here's where I met Jerry. And we started being good friends. And the whole, fifth grade knows each other. There was probably 35 kids in that class. I'm guessing somewhere around there with the 3 teachers. So what happens at this point is I start going to Jerry's house quite a bit because Jerry had all the cool stuff. Jerry had all the toys, as you know. Jerry had the trampoline. Jerry had the clubhouse out in the back, which was right on the corner of 18th and Center Street. We would, shoot crab apples at cars going by from his fort in the backyard, running up Center Street to get on Interstate 15. We would do all kinds of that stupid kid stuff. So this is when, so see if you remember these kids, Jan. Bob Lurch, of course, Jerry Bertchold, myself, me, and Todd Haig.
I
Remember
remember
Todd? Okay, Todd was in and we did a couple of productions, where we did a drama thing, and of course Jan's the only, Jan's fantastic, and the rest of us are just ridiculously stupid. It's horrible. But people would come from all over town to see Jan in a little fifth grade
Production.
classroom production, which justly so. She's a professional actress. This is why I wanted one of the main reasons I wanted to be on this podcast. Robert Bertchold did not like Jerry's friends that were the boys. He did not like us at all. And this was very apparent. And because we were your friends, and he probably saw us as some kind of a threat or something he didn't want, and he just wanted to get out of the way. I was in Jerry's house, I don't know how many times. Robert Bertchold never said a word to me. Not that I care. I just assume not have him. But the first one that said anything about it was Todd Haig. Now, here's the gang of four: me, LDS, Jerry, LDS, and Bertchold's son, Todd Haig, who was basically a non-churchgoer, really didn't believe in God at all. And then there was Bob Lurch, who was, I believe, is a Methodist. The interesting part of this to me was the fact that the first one who mentioned anything about Robert Bertchold being weird was Todd Haig. And it happened quick. I remember him telling me one time in school, Jerry's dad is weird. Something is weird about Jerry's dad. This is a fifth grade
Wow.
child saying this. This is a fifth grade child.
Wow.
So I thought, and here I am. I thought, well, yeah, he doesn't really talk to us. He goes, he's talked to me one time. And I said, what did he say? He said, hi, Todd Haig. Hi, Todd Haig. And that's all he said. I thought, yeah, that's pretty weird. But, I mean, he's a church guy, so he can't be that bad. We'll talk about this some more later. You know, have your faith, but keep your guard up at the same time. Question authority. So, Todd Haig's the first one that ever says that, and the rest of us jump on pretty quick because I think he truly hated us. I think Robert Bertchold truly hated Jerry's friends that were boys. Now, your sisters and stuff, did he want them like he wanted you? Of course not. He was completely infatuated with you, obviously, or we wouldn't be doing this. But he needs to put the charm on to them or other people. And then, how it comes out in the end, how, we'll talk about this later, but how he put on the charm to your dad when in reality, he probably truly hated your dad for the fact that he had the sacred, honor of being your father, and he was just so jealous of that. But time moves on. So we get to the point we're in sixth grade, and this gang is still, hanging out. And Jerry says to me, probably back in fifth grade, because he crushed on you hard. And I remember him saying specifically to me, and this has been 50 years ago, I want someone for my girlfriend, but my dad gets in the way. And I thought, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Well, yeah, and you're young.
And I knew it was
Yeah.
you. And I knew it was you. I mean, it was obvious he was really, had a crush on you. And who wouldn't? You were cute as can
Thank
be.
you.
I mean,
Well, and I write about Jerry in my little diary. Like, I crushed on him too. I wrote about how he held my hand when we were having family home evening together one night. I write many times about Jerry and like those first little flutters of,
right.
just crush.
And
As
this
a
is
fifth
fifth grade.
grader. Yeah, innocent. Hmm.
Yeah, good. Wow, Jerry working the handhold. I
Like,
mean, hats off to him.
I should get it out and read it. It was really funny. Like, his hand brushed my hand, and then he kind of set it there for just a minute. It's pretty cute and kind of
Good for
makes you
him.
sad when you realize how much harm his father did and how hard that
Oh,
must be
yes.
to process. Anyway, keep going. So we're
Yes.
at that 5th
So
grade,
here
we're
we
all
are
together.
now. So sixth grade, after sixth grade is over, I move. My parents built a home up on the east side of Pocatello, Idaho, up into the mountains. We built a house up above a ski area at that
Mhm.
time, a small ski area called
Mm.
Caribou. But but for seventh, eighth, and ninth grades, that was junior high school at Franklin Junior High School, still there.
Yep.
I still went to school with all the kids that I had gone to school with for the first, you know, 6 years, and then plus kindergarten. So the first 7 years. So Franklin Junior High, first semester, uh, date is correct here, October 17th,
You got
74.
it. Yep.
Okay. So I was still good friends with Jerry all the way through until ninth grade, and I'll tell you what I remember of all that. It had, you know, we hadn't hung out as much anymore because I didn't live right in the neighborhood anymore, so it was not as convenient. But October 17th, 1974 was the day of your first
Yep.
kidnapping, and my mother picked me up from school. I don't know if it was because I had to get to a football practice. That must have been what it was, because I usually took a school bus back home, back up, you know, up the mountain, up Buckskin Road to get to my
Mm-hmm.
home. But in seventh grade, football was done through the city, not through the junior high school. And then eighth and ninth grade, it was done through the city. So seventh grade, she picks me up. October 17th, that's football time. She must have been taking me to school. She says, "Did anything happen in school today?" Yeah, Jan was kidnapped. The whole school knew, and I don't know how we knew, because I remember your friend Caroline, and we're going to talk at the end. I try to remember who that is. She was in fourth and fifth grade with us.
Yes.
Trying to
She
remember
just went to
Caroline
the other junior high school. She went to Irving.
to
Mm-hmm.
Irving.
Yeah.
Okay.
So uh we had Jan Hull. She was there.
Yep.
And
Yes.
my cousin David Broberg, he was there.
Yes.
He was your friend too sometimes. You guys
David was on a baseball team with me
okay.
too. David was my friend. He was on one of the baseball teams I was on. He was a year younger than me, but they did baseball teams in that of every two
Yeah.
years. So you would be 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, and so forth. And that was done through the
Right.
city until you got to high
Right.
school.
So
So
even if you
my
didn't
mother
know
picks me
that
up.
day because it was not at all public knowledge, they hadn't even called the police until it didn't really happen till the Monday after that. I mean, I don't know how you would have known on that day just because
Okay, maybe
nobody
it
knew.
was
I
the
think it
Monday
was the
then.
Monday after. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so whenever it was, everybody knew about it. I don't remember having an assembly over it. I don't know if the teachers in each home room mentioned it, that it had happened, or what the deal was. But my mother picks me up, so that would have been probably the 20th, October 20th of
Mhm.
74, if I'm correct, or the 9th,
Yeah, the 20th.
depending on what day that you were kidnapped on a Friday,
Yes, or Thursday night. I can't remember cuz piano was I think it was Thursday.
Thursday.
Mhm.
I think your mother said something about it being a school
Mhm.
night, so get her back. So it must have been a Thursday. Okay, so it was been the 21st or
Yeah.
something. My mother picks me up. She says, "Did anything happen today?" Yeah, Jan was kidnapped. Oh, okay, and she knows this, and that's she's fishing. She goes, "What else did they say about it?" I said, "Well," she goes, "Do they know who did it?" I said, "No, no, no, they don't know who did it." She goes, "They do know who did it." I said, "Well, who did it?" She goes, "Jerry's dad took her." And I knew, and I thought, and everything made sense to me right then. I thought, oh my God. She goes, does that surprise you? I said, not at all. She goes, why doesn't that surprise you? I said, because the way he acted around her, the way he acts around her. Well, what do you mean? I go, Mom, he acts like she is his daughter, and not like she's his, uh, seven, how old were we, 12? Not like he's his 12-year-old daughter, but it's like she's his baby daughter. She goes, she goes, she knows what's going on. I said, she goes, this doesn't surprise you. I said, this does not surprise me. This doesn't surprise me at all. The famous picture of you and him either for the marquee poster for what's the second thing you
Oh,
did? There
the
was the book. What's the
Abducted
second?
in Plain Sight.
Abducted in Plain
Mhm.
Sight. Okay, that's the marquee poster, correct?
Yeah,
A famous
that
poster of
picture of
him,
me
of
hugging
you on
him.
his on hip, you on his left
Mhm.
hip. You know, on his.
Yes. With my arms around him, cheek to cheek,
I could almost swear that that was in Jerry's, right outside Jerry's bedroom in their
because of the
basement,
paneling.
and I could almost swear I was there.
Wow.
It's so weird because there was one time I remember that that you came over to their house, and then he was, holding you, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with this guy, and I thought, this is really weird. uh, I'm sorry, I saw it,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
well,
I,
yeah. And
this is
even though
crazy.
you're
I
12
mean,
and you may not have all the words for it, you still have a gut and you still have sensory things that go, this is just
yes,
feels weird. He's just so weird around her. I mean, that's what you guys are seeing because
yes,
it's always when he's got me alone on some, maybe I've run down to the basement for something or we're all playing or whatever. And he would just find those moments. He was so good at finding the
yes,
ways to get everybody isolated for a moment. I mean, we were all doing something together, but he'd find the moments like that. So good
yes.
at it.
And I specifically remember one time being in Jerry's bedroom, and and the door opened, and he was, holding you like that, very inappropriately. And I don't know if it's the same one that's on the marquee. I'm sure it's not, but it was something very similar to
Hmm.
that. So at that point, you're gone for six
Yep.
weeks. Are you back before Christmas
I was
then?
back right before Thanksgiving, but I didn't go back to school
Okay, Thanksgiving
until after
till
Christmas.
second
Yes.
semester. Okay. Okay. And of course, it's junior high school, so we go to a lot of different classes. So it's not like we're in the same, classroom, right across the room for each other anymore.
Yeah.
So, you know, Jan and I are friends, but we don't see each other like you do every day. Well, except for the one class.
Right. Or during the summer when
So
we were
anyway,
always on our bikes and always doing things and always at the park because we had that
correct.
great park that was right there also, right next
Bonneville
right
Park.
next to the mini dome and the Holt Arena.
Right? Mini Dome. So Holt
Mhm.
Arena used to be called the
Right.
Mini Dome for you people that are
Yeah.
listening. Yes, Bonneville Park, still there. Jan Hull lived. Oh, Jan Hull was on 20th Avenue
Yep.
University, right there. So she's right in
And
that
so
same
is my
area too.
cousins. All my cousins lived on 20th or
Yep,
University Avenue. They were up a little farther, you know, right
right
there.
there. So at this time, of course, you guys come back. Your parents get fooled. Obviously, I mean, I don't know how Bertchold pulled this off, but somehow you get a clean bill of health, a unviolated young lady, young girl. Dr. Rush gives you that diagnosis. So your parents are just like, okay, well, I mean, you didn't rape her, you didn't have sex with her, which of
Right.
course you're hiding because that's, if you don't hide it,
It's
then
going to be destroyed.
you're gonna die
Yeah.
and all this BS.
Yep.
And
Well, and two, I think
so
Brian, the point especially, and even now in 2023, it really is that it's the slow burn of a very calculating predator that is
yes,
grooming one member of the family, and creating a special relationship with every person in those secretive little moments like what you described in the basement, But everybody on the outside of that, it just looks like we're having fun, we're friends, we're doing stuff together, we go to church together. We're not at all looking because you meet somebody in a place of trust, in a safe place, and they know how to manipulate all that trust. That's all they do is build trust. Build it, build it, build it,
correct.
just to make sure. that when that diagnosis that the doctor gives, which of course back then they also didn't have the kind of tools that they have today. They have rape kits and they have coposcopes and they have a way of knowing things that were not obvious. And he was careful. That's the thing about it, which kind of a lot of times kids that go through this, they feel so guilty if it wasn't violent, but that was kinda how he was. He wasn't violent, at least not on that kidnapping. It progressed, but it wasn't on that. I mean, it was icky and awful, and I never told because I thought I was being watched, all those reasons, and that I would be vaporized and that
Correct.
Susan would then be taken, but it's all the grooming that he did in those 3 years when we were all friends, kids, having these fabulous, kick the can nights on the weekends and going to the park and going down to Bilo's and getting penny candy and on our bikes up to the racket club where David and Mark and Mike, my cousins, and Jan Hull and all of us could go swimming and we could hang out all
Yes.
day without our parents worrying about us. That's what we did.
Yeah, we
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 went
we rode our
everywhere.
bikes. When you needed a drink of water, you went
Who's ever
to
house.
somebody's hose in some front of somebody's
Yep.
house. You turned the hose on. You all got a drink. You shut off the water, and you went on, and nobody
Yeah,
cared.
it was a
It
whole
was it
day.
was
Oh, it was
nice.
fun. It was fantastic.
It was a
It
great
was.
childhood.
It truly was. It's the thing that actually I think ended up saving me in so many ways because there was so much that was so good before that day in October. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly right. And you're right. That's what saved you from
And
going into just complete
yeah,
depression or whatever it would
yeah.
be.
And I had support
So
because I had so many friends and
yes,
family that believed me and listened to me when it finally came out, which was much later. But yes, okay, back to
right.
the next part of the story. This is so fun.
So the next part. So then, okay, obviously, I mean, your dad had the embarrassing relationship with
Yeah, the masturbation in the
with
car.
Bertchold, which is, I mean, obviously your dad did not want to do that. Obviously, Bertchold's the one driving the car.
Totally.
Either your dad's going to get out and walk 10 miles, or he's going to assist this moron.
Yeah.
It's just, is your dad a homosexual? Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. So
No.
Bertchold spins this web, gets your mother in it, you in it, and your father in it. And that,
It's heartbreaking
I mean,
for me.
unreal how much work this guy
Yep.
did. I mean, if you want some young sex, just you would have been a lot easier. Just book a trip to Thailand and
Yeah.
go pay for it. I mean, it would have been a whole lot easier for everybody. I mean, I know that's a disgusting thing to say, but
Well, it is because we don't want
I mean,
anybody to be going through anything like this, and we know the culture and that we understand that people in a place like Thailand have also been groomed or forced or pimped, and it
absolutely.
is disgusting. They've been trafficked. It's all so devastating when you
It's
consider.
just the work
It
of the
totally
devil.
is
It's just
because,
completely the work of Satan.
25% of the whole planet has had this kind of abuse under the age of 18 or 16 in some countries where that's the age of maturity. There is so much rape of young people, trafficking of young people, incest, molestation. It's just
It's
awful.
just
It really is.
It's just sickening. It really
Yeah.
is. So back to the timeline as I remember it. So okay, December 24th,
Mhm.
74. This is right before you go back to school,
Yep.
uh, seventh grade,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
So Gail Berchtold comes in on Christmas Eve and destroys your guys' Christmas by saying, if you don't drop charges, then we're going to drop dime on MaryAnn and Bob and all this stuff.
It
Correct?
was really a
Christmas Eve?
combination. Okay, it was right around that time. Yes, it was right in that
Because
month.
I got December 24th on one of the,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of different ones in my head.
Right. It
So
was around that time. I can't tell you if that's the exact date, but what happened was, you know, Gail was trying to break because she was also his pawn, I believe, right? I
Correct.
mean, you were in her
Correct.
home. She was the nicest person and making
Absolutely.
the cookies. I mean, that kind of a mom, and doors open to all the neighborhood kids. I think that she too was groomed and traumatized and basically his pawn in a game that she
No
couldn't
question
win.
about it.
And so she
She could
sort of
not win. She was
prepared. Yeah, I
trapped.
think she kind of prepared. It was trying to prepare my mom and dad because what happened was when that actually came out, that blackmailing, it was really done by Berchtold's attorney, who was also a customer of my dad's at the store. She was, she wasn't a friend of the family. I mean, but we knew where she lived. She lived close by us all. She was in our basic neighborhood also. And he had hired her to be his attorney. And she's the one that actually then called my mom and dad and said, "Come down here and talk to me because we can make a trial and all that kind of stuff go away. You guys can move on with your lives. I've got it all figured out. And this, I'm going to tell you how we can do that without any of the dirty laundry." Because the dirty laundry had only happened with my dad before the first kidnapping. The short-lived affair with my mom had was about to happen, but it didn't actually happen until after that first kidnapping. My father never let him back in the house. My dad had started to pull away from him, and maybe it was because of the thing in the car, and because he was feeling like we spent too much time with them, and because my dad felt so guilty for what he had done, because he was a very religious man. He was to the day he died, he was very much a believer and believed in those basic 10 commandments, and he felt like he had done
Sure.
something terrible to my mother, and all of those things were true. So I think my dad had started to pull back for a number of reasons, but also because we have other friends. That's what he said. We have family. We have his twin brother, my uncle Dick, and Aunt Carolyn, and David, Mark, Mike, and Scotty. And we weren't
Yes.
spending any time with them. And they were, like you said, they just lived up on 20th Street. They were only 3 or 4 blocks away and up the little hill. So it was just really this combination of his manipulation and his ability to get other people to do his dirty work, including his wife, almost including his children. I just really feel like you're right. He almost didn't even like his oldest son because
Well, that's what
the
I was going to
crush.
ask you. I was actually going to ask you that.
So
Yes.
that's
I was going to
Yeah, that's
ask.
all I was gonna say is that it was really the attorney that told my
Okay.
parents in that meeting when they came down. And of course, my parents, they've never had a traffic ticket. They've never been in a courtroom. They don't even know that they shouldn't have gone to talk to her. They have
Sure.
no idea. They know her. They're like, "Oh, you can make this an easier process and we don't have to go to trial and we just get on with life." And the Birchtolds are still
Yep.
going to church at our same church. They're in our lives, but not in our home. Bob
Yes.
Bertchold was never in our home, but the kids, even Gail, those that part of the family, my dad never let him back in, but those folks, Gail and the kids, we could have a relationship with Jerry, Jimmy, Joey, Jeff, and Jill because we could have it during the day. Dad's at work, whatever. We found ways to be with the kids, but
Right.
they were our best friends. So I think those are things that people really don't get the nuance of it when they watch, even watching the series. You get it to some degree, but you don't get how intertwined
Right.
our families were, how close all of these families in the neighborhood were. I mean, we trusted each other.
Yes.
We walked in each other's houses without knocking on the door. Like I could walk into your house, Brian, as easily as I could walk into my own house. It was like
Sure.
that's how open door our our relationships were, with everybody, our Methodist friends, our Presbyterian friends, our Greek Orthodox friends, you know, everybody. We
Absolutely.
were just like it was a college town, like you said, and we were right across the street from the university. And so it had that. I mean, it was an intelligent town, but it was also a safe place. It felt so
Yes.
safe. And so,
I
yeah,
believe.
go
Oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
finish.
I believe that I think I remember, and your mom may have said it in her
Uh huh.
book, that Idaho State was having a basketball game one day, one evening, and they actually announced that you were found in Mexico during the
Yep,
basketball
that
game.
happened. Yep.
Now, how close is that the actual university announces it to the crowd? And the crowd was just,
Roaring.
you know,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, that's how close the community was. That was one of a
yes, it
couple of
was
various
really, it
announcements.
was really good.
Yeah, it was.
So, so then, okay, at this point, when does Robert Bertchold move to Salt
So
Lake City?
it was before the second kidnapping. So it was sometime during
Okay,
this next year because people, again, don't get the timeline. A whole year, almost 2 years pass before the second kidnapping.
yes,
And we are traveling up to see, Gail and the kids up in Ogden. Um, that's where they moved to. It was, still there was a lot of hanging on to that relationship, a lot of letters and cards that were written back and forth between Karen and Jimmy and me and Jerry, and of course all the while I've got the mission on my mind. Like, I have to be with him
sure.
because, this mission, I don't want to be vaporized. And
Now that was after the
oh
second
no,
kidnapping.
that started the day I was kidnapped. I woke up to the sound of those alien
When
voices.
did the Berchtolds not? When did Gail take the kids and move away? Right at the start of ninth grade. Is that
Yes, that was
correct?
before the second kidnapping,
Okay,
but a little bit earlier than, like, right before, because they had already gotten they moved away, and then I think she was about to file for a divorce because that
okay,
happened, like, almost right before, I think right before the second kidnapping in August,
okay.
before we started school in
Well,
ninth grade.
so here's what I remember ninth grade, the start of ninth grade. Jerry was actually at Franklin Junior High for just a few days of ninth
Mhm.
grade. For the first couple of days of ninth grade. You're already gone for the second time,
Yep.
correct? You were kidnapped in
Uh-huh.
August, maybe?
Yes, August 10th.
Through till what? Then didn't come again until the second semester again?
It came
Is that about
about,
correct?
I was gone. I was also found before Christmas, but it was almost 4 months. I'd almost been through a whole semester of school at the Catholic boarding school in Pasadena.
Okay. Okay. That's what I remember Jerry being at school for just a couple of days. And I remember then he was gone.
Yeah.
There was just, no, because people are starting to think, okay, Jerry's dad's at it again, and who wants to deal with this crap.
Yeah.
So Gail must have just taken the kids and said, we gotta go. I remember Jerry. I remember talking to him. I believe it was the first day of school, maybe into the second, but they were immediately gone.
Yeah. Yep. They
And I
were looking.
remember, I don't know what the deal was, but Jerry was still, the funny, lovable guy. But I remember, and I don't know, I remember a trach scar.
Hmm.
I don't know if he got upset enough that something he had to be hospitalized or once. If you're watching Jerry, please give me a call. I don't know.
Well, I do
Jerry,
know that
these kids, the Burstall kids are all great. The only problem here is the
yeah.
dad.
Exactly. And I don't know exactly what, if that was like a tracheotomy scar. Is that what you're saying, that you saw that on
But it was
Jerry? A
very
very small.
small, so I
Well,
don't
I know
know.
that something happened to his legs and he lost control of his legs. And without knowing exactly what, I shouldn't speculate, but I just remember that he went to the hospital and that we had a whole
Okay,
fast, like at church when you would fast and pray for somebody, wouldn't
sure,
eat or
sure.
drink, and then have a prayer when you broke your fast for a person. We did one of those for Jerry. So that
Okay,
could have been part of that when he went
and
to the
that
hospital.
probably
It could
was
have
then.
been. I
That's
think he
probably
got
what it was.
poisoned. I don't know. I think there was more to it that was deviant and horrible from his own father, but it's just my
Oh
thought.
my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me.
No, me neither.
Uh, okay, so ninth grade, Jerry's gone, you're gone in the first semester.
Yep.
This is the time, that. So the first time you go through the abducted in plain sight and you're listening to the telephone calls on the tapes that are actually, the real
They
tapes
are.
being played
Yep.
again. The first time you listen to those, you're like, oh my gosh, this is why are they being so nice to this guy? But your mother played it perfect because she's got to keep him on the phone.
Right.
She's got to keep him on the line.
Yep.
And he's saying the stupid. I mean, everybody's like, oh, he's such a master criminal. He is, but he's also an idiot
Yep.
too. You know what I mean? He's just, I mean,
He's both.
Zeta and Zethra. What two? So these aliens from another planet speak English, and they have Z names, and everything in the '70s was a Z
Isn't
name.
that the truth?
Everything was, isn't that everything was a Z? Everything was purple and yellow, and everything has started with a Z.
It's true.
It was just
Even the home
so,
of the space burgers down at the Tasty Treat, that was
yes,
everything was built around. I mean, it was the space age. It was the beginning of like the race to space in the 60s. And it
yes,
was everywhere. And our newspapers had, you know, all these stories about UFOs that were sightings and they'd have these
yes.
black and white pictures. Do you remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
So
All the
crazy.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how you were brainwashed. Absolutely. So, okay, so the one that gets me the most is when, Bertchold calls and your mom answers and he's like, oh, I just talked to Jan and
Ugh.
I asked her, how you doing, hon? And, oh, hard. How you earning your money? And,
Ugh.
oh, I'm prostituting and I'm selling drugs. I'm like, are you kidding?
Fill in the
Jan
blank.
Broberg is prostituting and selling drugs. I mean, Berthold, you couldn't have figured out anything better
Yeah,
than
that was
that.
stupidity.
I mean, I'm almost sorry he's dead. I'd like to kill him myself. I mean, he's just a piece of crap.
Oh.
I mean, he's just a disgusting human being. That's all it
Well, I was
is.
so scared of
So sorry.
shots, like, I'm sticking a needle in my arm, I would almost pass out, I would cry when I knew I had to have a
Absolutely.
vaccine or
Me too.
or go to the doctor for a, penicillin shot because I was sick. I hated needles.
Yes.
I mean, that was one of the stupidest things he ever said because for sure, all my family was like, "That is so impossible. It is so
Yes.
counterintuitive to who our daughter is, even if you are,
Yes.
brainwashing her, which they didn't really know the extent of that, but they knew he was getting me to be a different person than I was. They knew that because they could see it even in his stupid lies. It was just ridiculous. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then let's see. Let's see here. What else do I remember? Okay, so I mean, so then at this point you're at the
School.
Catholic girls
Mhm.
school, Pasadena,
Yep.
California. He impersonates a CIA, a CIA
Mhm.
agent, which is a federal. There's another felony right there. He
Oh, I
beats.
know. How? It's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about
Absolutely.
failure of
So
justice in the justice system, and it still fails victims all the time because, "Oh, there's not enough evidence, we're not gonna press charges. Oh, I'm sorry that your father raped you from the age of 5 until you were 17, but we don't have any evidence, so what can we do? We'll
yeah.
just let him
What are we gonna
we'll
do
just let him
now?
go and go ahead and molest and rape the next kid in your family or the next door
Yeah.
neighbor's kid," This is how it goes.
Exactly.
It's just infuriating.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had two little dogs,
Yep,
right?
mhm. Tiffy and Bandit.
And of course, I bet one of the first thing he did was he made friends with those dogs
Yep.
too.
Oh, yeah.
So they knew who he was, so he can sneak into your house and rape you right underneath. I mean,
I
unbelievable.
mean, Brian, he built
He
that
pulls
whole
this stuff
oh,
off.
absolutely, and he had built the walls in the basement, the big open
Yes.
rooms that weren't really finished, but they were finished. puts up new walls, makes sure I'm at the very back corner where there's two little windows so that I can sneak out of the window, and he's right there to help me when he kidnaps me the second time.
Yes.
And he gets into my house, and continues to play the tapes and wake me up to the alien voices, and then be standing in my doorway with his feet are in socks and no shoes, and then keep going on the whole thing until you just can't. It's just hard to wrap your mind around this kind of a criminal who is so, I mean, just like, it's like just no thought almost. Like, he can get away with
I know.
anything and he knows it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's almost like, how did he do it? Was it because he was so smart, or because he was so overconfident that he just got lucky? I mean, what is it? But we'll talk about at the end what happens. So now January 24th, 77.
Yeah.
So here we are, second semester, ninth grade. You've just been back to school now for what, 3 weeks?
Yep.
Maybe 3 weeks. He's in prison, and he hires two guys to burn down your father's flower
Yep.
shop.
It was in February. Freezing
Unreal.
cold, hires these two guys he's in a jail cell with. They go and start the fire in the basement of the flower shop where all the paper goods are, all the dried flowers
Yes.
are. And it not only takes out our store, the flower shop, but the whole city.
Half the
Oh, yeah,
block.
the whole block had to be torn down. It's not even there anymore. All those other businesses.
Correct. It's now a
Yep.
bank,
With a
correct?
parking lot. Yep.
And yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
like 10 other businesses that lost
Yes.
everything like we did.
And how many people could have been in that building, could have been killed by that
Oh,
fire?
it's just,
Who
yeah,
knows?
it's horrible.
And Jan Holt told me just
Yeah.
today, I when you see the not the documentary, but the 8-part series where your dad goes to the back door and then doesn't go out the back
Oh,
door,
yeah.
did Berchtold hire somebody to actually kill him at
Oh,
that
I
point?
believe he did. I totally believe he
We
did.
don't know for sure,
But there
but
was definitely,
you
like, the whole story of that is so interesting because not only did dad go down to do a funeral spray for somebody that was going to come and pick it up, had to have it early that morning. So he went down super early. So it's pretty much a ghost town, downtown until, 8 or 9 o'clock. And this is like 6:30 in the morning. And he's finished this thing and they're supposed to pick it up at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, which he never did, as a normal rule, he went through the back door and then locked it behind him. But my dad didn't do that. The back door of the flower shop was always open. I mean, we could walk from the high school, over, and we'd come in the back door. It was closer than going around to the front. And we'd walk in the
right.
back and we'd go, to the ice box and see if there were any, sodas in there. Or, my dad had these
Oh yeah.
awesome boxed mints that were these chewy, like they were cream colored with like pink stripes. And we'd try to get dad to give us a box of those or whatever. And he didn't do that as a general rule. But he did that day. And then he gets this phone call and yeah, we're here to pick it up. And then before the phone call, he sees the back door and somebody trying to get in and it's locked. And he hears their voices and they want to get the thing. And he just, that feeling that, that again, your gut, listen to your spidey senses, he did not unlock the door and called the police. And then when he went back and looked at the name of the person that had died, it was Bob Roberts. So you got Bob Bertchold, you got Robert Broberg, and he's like, oh my gosh, was this even a real person that died? Of course not. And I'm positive he was going to kill him.
Another setup.
Another setup, because at this point, he was afraid of losing me almost because I was so depressed. I was so dark. I was so dark to my parents. I was so dark in the angst of saving this dying planet. I think he thought that they were going to unbrainwash me and he was going to lose me. And that's why this all happened. Yeah, and it just one more thing for me to stand out there with my dad and my sisters and mom in the middle of the night watching the firemen, and dad's got his arms around his 4 girls, and he's just like, "Let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. Everything I need, everything that matters is right here in my arms." And it was like, I knew the fire was my fault. I knew I must have done something wrong. And that one thing, which was a huge thing, but it kept me obedient to him and to the aliens for at least another year, year and a half almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Sick.
Very, it's just it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, this story, your story is second. This is, I mean, if you got Hitchcock and Stephen King together, they couldn't have came up together with something that is as crazy as your real story. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I
unbelievable.
know, and I think that that makes
And
it even more believable because it is so unbelievable. Like I couldn't have made this stuff up. I didn't make it up.
right, exactly. You know, I remember Dan Abrams when he interviewed you. The first thing he says, "This story you're about to hear, you're going to think it's a movie,
Yeah.
but it's real."
Yep.
You remember the Dan
Oh yeah.
Abrams talk?
Yeah, I'd love to get in touch
Well,
with him again.
when was it? That was right about the. That was right after the. Well, let's hold on to that.
Okay.
Hold on to that for a second.
You gotta
Okay, so
give me the rest of your memories here.
okay, so that's about, that's towards the end of, ninth grade. It's we got 4 months left in ninth grade. I don't think you and I are in many of the same classes that second semester. Maybe we were, but I mean, Berchtold's got you brainwashed
Yep.
that, you're not supposed to talk to
Nope.
boys, which is, not good for me, I'm sorry to say, I mean, not good. But the saddest part
So
is
hard.
how he doesn't give a damn about your dad,
Yeah.
and your relationship with your dad. Just let it be destroyed. I don't care. I need Jan so bad as my sexual toy that I don't care what I have to do to get it. It's
It's
unreal.
really sick.
And we can talk about that kind of at the end. But okay, so the next thing I remember is, you know, it's it's just what I heard from the documentaries after, because now I'm not, for 10th, 11th, and 12th, I'm not in the same school anymore. And, you're not supposed to talk to boys anyway. And so,
Yeah, and one more year after junior high goes by, and I'm 15 now and I'm going to be turning 16, and that was the magic age where I was supposed to be vaporized if I hadn't had the child to save the dying
right,
planet. So now I go through my sophomore year, of high school, because like you said, I was the younger one in the class. My birthday wasn't until the summer, but I went to school, at age 15, my sophomore year in high school. And again, I couldn't talk to boys. I was never, supposed to, hug my dad. And I'd had such a close relationship with my dad. He was such a great father for daughters. He was just so sweet,
oh, absolutely,
and it was a really lonely, year, and I was carrying a lot of weight and I was very dark. And then that next summer is, when once I turned 16, when I went to that theater camp, I was going to be turning 16, and that summer was that pivotal moment, being in that theater
right,
camp at BYU. And yeah, that's when the whole ice cream miracle happened, and the boy in front of me in the
yes,
line down at the bowling alley where the ice cream was, he bought my ice cream, and he was in the theater camp with me, and I knew he liked me, but I avoided him, and I just knew something terrible was going to happen. And then the dogs were sick, and I thought, oh no, this is what happens when I let a boy buy my ice cream. And then they
right.
didn't die. And then I went, oh my gosh, before I tell Susan about the mission and kill her and then kill myself if she doesn't want to do it, I better make sure this is real, you know?
So you actually had a gun in your
I
possession?
knew where my dad had purchased a gun after the first kidnapping, and I knew where he had it hidden. I knew where it was. I had found it and I had looked at it and I knew what the bullets were supposed to be in it, and that was my plan. I was going to finish the theater camp. I would have turned 16 the week before the theater camp was over, and if I hadn't been vaporized, I was going to then tell Susan about the mission, and then if she didn't want to do it, I would kill her and then I would kill myself. But that thing with the dogs and the boy buying the ice cream all happened at the theater camp. And within that 1 week before we did our final performance and I went home, when my mom called me back and said, "Oh, the dogs are okay, Jan. You were so upset. You were crying and like it was your fault. It wasn't your fault. I think they got poisoned, or maybe I fed them something that was bad. I think Bertchold poisoned them." And,
Oh, I'm sure he
right?
did.
And even though he wasn't living in Pocatello, he had, moles all over the place, people that would do whatever for
Sure.
him, like burn down entire buildings for him.
Yeah.
So the dogs get poisoned, but then they don't die. And that was the first moment in almost 4 years that I had a thought. It was one thought. Maybe this isn't real. And before I tell Susan and kill her and myself, I need to know if it's real. But then the next thought, right after that, the next little thought that I had after I hung up the phone from my mom at theater camp was, "I'm just kidding. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I know you're watching me.
Right.
Don't hurt my family." It was like, "Tell me what to do.
Right.
I've been trying to get together with Berchtold while I've been at theater camp, but I'm always with somebody and I'm always at practice and I'm at workshops. I can't get away." He wanted me to meet with him, of course, to keep going with the whole sex
God.
abuse. Yeah, it was horrible. Anyway, so
Yeah. Yeah. Exact. I mean, it's so. Let's see. So then the next. So that happens, and then you know
comes
all the
out.
things that happen.
Mhm.
In high school, I don't know that. The next thing I remember is I go visit my parents in Pocatello, and they tell me, "Hey, Jan and her mom just wrote a book," and my mom showed me a newspaper article of you with some balloons. You're playing Nurse Louise of the Everwood series,
Yep.
and there was an article in the Idaho State Journal about you and your mom writing the book, and I think it talked to talk about Bert's trying to get to stop you from doing your speech or something at, where would that be, Dixie College?
Yes, I was doing that. That was a little later, but yes, that happened. And that was really a big deal because he showed up in a van with a gun and he ran into one of the Bikers Against Child Abuse. I had some friends, my dentist and his assistant. They were also, they rode their Harley, or maybe they don't ride Harleys. I can't remember what bikes they ride, but
Sure.
they got upset that Berchtold was making threats to the university to not let me give the speech to the women and their daughters that were going to the university, because I had made it up. So anyway,
Right. Okay. So I think it was an article
yeah,
about
and that
that.
I was,
And then soon after that, you're on Dan Abrams'
yep,
show. And
and then I was, and then
that was the first time I see, because I hadn't seen many of your, movies and so
yeah, and
forth.
then I was on Good Morning
And I remember
America.
seeing you, yes, with Diane
Yep.
Sawyer.
Mhm.
Okay. I remember seeing that. And then let's see. That's when Birch told they're going to put him in prison, correct? Is that when it
Well,
happens?
what happens is that they are going to press charges for 2 misdemeanors and 3 felonies, nothing to do with raping little girls, but because he was a
No,
registered sex offender who had not
correct.
registered in Logandale, Nevada, where he was living at the time. It was having a firearm, which was also not allowed. A sex offender can't have that. So, because of Heidi Hicks, who was the little girl after me, who I got to meet in that documentary that Peacock did called A Friend of the Family True Evil. So there's the series on Peacock with these marvelous actors, and it's incredibly well
Yes,
done and it's very true to the
yes,
story. And then they
yes.
also did a documentary with us, and I got to go and meet one of his other victims. And it was just so incredible to hear her story. And sometime I hope that she'll join me on this podcast and tell her story, because it really was an amazing experience to know I wasn't alone and to have somebody else corroborate, what happened to me. And she came after me. And it's just like, he did it the same way, charmed her mother and then made her little girl a part of the family. And she was best friends and felt like the little girl in the Bertchold family was her best friend and her sister.
Yes.
And we matched in age to Jerry and Jimmy and Joey, but then Jeff and Jill, you know they were younger, and they were the right age for when Heidi was being assaulted and abused. And she's the only one
And
that
this was in
ever,
Salt Lake
in Salt
City.
Lake City. Uh-huh. And she was the only
What was
one.
her mother, a teacher?
I don't think her mother was a teacher. I'm not sure
Jan
exactly.
Holt told me about somebody that was a teacher.
It might have been her mother, but I don't think
I
so.
don't know.
Um I'm not sure. But yeah, there's been other girls that we have found and talked to briefly about how he met their mothers and how he charmed them. And then, of course, it's always because they have a 9-year-old. It seems like it was always when they were
Right.
9. And so,
Exactly.
she's the only, but Heidi was the only one who told a detective at school eventually. I mean, after 8 years, almost 9 years of abuse, and they did, it went forward with the state, and he was convicted for rape of a child. And that was in Salt Lake City. That was the name of the charge, that he was found guilty of rape of a child. And he was sent to prison, but again, he spent less than 10 months in prison for that, after having raped her for 8, almost 9 years. And it's
Oh my
just
God.
so horrible, right? It's just the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I got to meet her, and that was really something for me. It was so incredibly important for me, and I have great deal of love and respect for her. But that's in the documentary that's on Peacock. Um,
Yes. Okay. And
so
I did see
yeah,
that.
and so, yeah, I've had all these
Um,
opportunities and ways to tell my story. And it's so interesting to have a perspective like yours, Brian, because, I'm trying to make a difference in the world of child abuse. And the only way we can do that is we have to change our culture from a rape culture to a culture who believes victims, and a culture who will prosecute those offenders. And the problem is, most of the offenders are people that you know and that you already think you can trust and that you probably love, because it's someone in your family, in your congregation, it's on your sports team or in your, you know, dance or theater program, and they're the favorite school teacher. It's just not scary strangers. And
all of the above.
we want to believe it's a scary stranger, so that we don't have to actually look at what's living right next door or in our home, and we don't have to do
Yes.
anything about it. We'd rather sacrifice our children than do something about it or risk the family name. And it's just wrong. So getting your perspective and your voice, in your circle of influence in Denver, Colorado, to be loud and bold is what's needed. We have to know the extent of this kind of abuse. Familiar abusers, 25% of children between the time they're born and the age of 18, 25% of them are abused, molested, raped, or experience incest by someone they know.
That's
25%.
one out of every four.
Yep. It is just it's just it's almost unbelievable, but we have to believe it and then do something about it. Oh gosh, I cannot thank you for being here.
Oh, well,
Enough.
yeah, and we got some
Okay,
more.
good. Okay, keep
I got,
going.
yeah,
Other things you want to
I got a
talk
little
about.
more
Good.
here. Yes, I got 2 more pages here. I'm on page 4.
Oh my gosh.
of my
And you
notes.
have 5
I kind of got
track
some notes to
notes.
keep myself on
I
track
think it's
correct.
great.
So I love I can't remember. I think it's in the Abducted in Plain Sight when you are being interviewed and someone says, "Have you forgiven him?" I can't remember who asked you that, and then you to make the statement, "Forgiveness is a tricky word."
Yep.
Perfect answer. If you would have said, "Yes, I've forgiven him," it's like, you know what? That's too quick.
Yeah.
So and then you mentioned something. Yes, there's my parents made mistakes. Probably the biggest one was probably trying to hide what they had done with Bertchold instead of just coming right out with it and said, okay, boom, here it is. We don't care what you think.
Yeah.
This is it. We're moving on from this. But I would say your dad's biggest mistake is your dad was always too nice of a guy
Yeah.
for somebody like Bertchold because Bertchold is going to see that and he's going to pounce on that.
Yep.
Your dad was so slick. We would go buy, flowers for the dances, school dances.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Highland, and I'm at Highland, and you're at Pocatello High. But he would do things like, okay, now here's the corsage. Now, what you ought to do, and this is with your cousin Brad,
Okay.
because I was good friends with your cousin
Of
Brad once I
course.
moved to Highland,
Aw.
and unfortunately went to his funeral a year and a
We
half
did. I
ago.
saw you there.
We were both
Yeah,
there.
my
Yep.
cousin Brad, my age, our age, passed away in a
Yes.
motorcycle accident. It was so sad. Left his sweet kids
Yes, it was.
behind and oh, so
Yes.
and wife.
And
Sad.
so you'd go get the corsage from your dad, and he says, now what you ought to do is get a rose too and give that to her mom because her
Oh,
mom's gonna like it. I mean, that's what your dad would do. I mean, who thinks that.
yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't have thought about that
yeah,
without your dad saying, "Here's what you ought to do." This is
yeah.
this is
And all
this
the
is good.
boys that ever took me on a date, and I'm pretty sure all of my cousins and probably you got the family discount because that was dad. He would just
I'm sure I didn't pay as much as I should have. It was
he
awesome,
was a
man.
good guy. Yeah.
So, and then you made the statement saying, there's a difference between, making mistakes in partly in naivety
Yeah.
as compared to the criminal moves that Berchtold made.
Yeah. And really, that is the truth because you think about you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know that you're being led, manipulated like a puppet on a string down a road until it's really kind of too late. It's like you, it's that slow again, that slow, methodical, flattery, doing just the right things, saying just the right things, making sure everybody's in the right place, kind of the wrong
Right.
place at the right time, all of that. It was all premeditated and it took a long, long time for those mistakes that my parents made to happen. And I still get people that are like, you're in la la land, you should completely divorce your parents. They didn't protect you, blah, blah, blah. They knew. And I'm like, they didn't know. And I'm like, the next time that
Right.
you get conned into buying something or doing something that you later go back and go, what in the world was I thinking? Why would I do that? That's not like me. Then maybe you'll have a little better understanding of how
Sure.
manipulation works. It works. They work on people that are, kind of the nicest people, the most open, the kindest, the most loving, like you said,
Right. It's so easy to be an armchair quarterback or say something
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I can't." Stephen Curry missed that shot. I can hit that shot. Well, you can't hit that shot in that situation with your heart running at 110 beats per minute and the best defenders in basketball on you and all that. You're not going to make that shot. I promise you that much.
Mhm.
It's just when people and I know I'm sure after Abducted in Plain Sight come out, you had all kinds of people saying just vile things about you and your family, and good for you to just keep moving on and not not letting it get the best of you, because I'm sure, once I watched that, I thought it didn't, it went too fast. Who would get it all in what was it, an hour and a half or something? I don't know, maybe 2 hours. I don't know how long it was,
About 90
but
minutes. Uh-huh.
hour and a half. Okay. You know, if you're not in the situation, don't judge the person that's been in that situation. Don't assume that you would have done so much, that you would have done, oh, I would have done everything right.
Yeah.
How do you know that? You never lived the situation.
Yeah, and you're trying to
You
tell
don't
a
know that at all.
7 years of a story in 90 minutes for
Right.
one thing, and then the
Exactly.
story didn't even end there. And so I'm hoping that there will be a season 2 or a 3 or a 4, because Berchtold continued to, violate our, you know, I mean, he found me many times throughout my life, and just like when he
Yes.
showed up at the conference, and that was so terrifying, but that was when I really found out that I could be a badass, that I could stand up for myself and look at him in that courtroom after not seeing him since I was a kid, since I was like 15 and a half years old, maybe closer to my 16th birthday. I had not seen
Yes.
him, and to be able to point my finger in his face and say, the only reason I am telling my story, this story, is to protect other people from predators like you, you know,
Yes.
made me so
I
mad.
actually wrote that down. It was so perfect.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yeah.
My goal, Mr. Berchtold, is to educate people about predators like you. That is my goal. I cannot believe that you can look me in the eye. You have no soul. If you want to, then he goes, and then of course he does the narcissistic
Oh,
apology.
yeah.
They always apologize like this. Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, right? That's how he said it.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I don't see that I did it, but apparently you do. So I'm sorry that you feel that way.
Yeah.
And then he says something like, later on, well, I do apologize for what I've done. Okay, then get up there and tell everybody what you did.
Yeah. Tell the truth.
200 rapings?
Yeah.
200 plus, you
Yeah.
said? I mean,
It was a
and then he
daily.
says, and then you said, if you want to apologize, you should stand up, tell the truth, and serve your time in jail. I wrote that quote down because it was awesome. You are a badass, is what you are. So, anyways,
Thanks,
so
Brian.
here's what this guy gets away with. So here's the poetic justice of this whole thing. This is almost Al Capone-esque right here.
Yeah.
This guy gets away with hundreds of rapings of you, 2 kidnapping charges, a charge of impersonating a CIA agent,
Hmm.
and an arson charge, which today would be, I don't know what the money would be back then, but today it would be in a whole block in Pocatello, Idaho. That is 50 million plus
Probably.
dollars. Plus, if someone were to die in that fire, then it's an infinite amount.
Yeah.
That is poetic justice right here, because what does he get caught on? He can't leave you alone. You and your mother are on your book tour, and you go to Dixie State or whatever they call it now.
Yeah.
It's a different name now. Uh, and the Baca people who you have doing security,
Well, along with the police
uh,
departments, the
with
campus
the police and
security
all
and
that,
St.
they're
George.
helping with
Yeah, all of it,
security.
just trying to protect me.
So one of them's like, hey, there's Berchtold. And they jump up. One of them jumps up on his.
It was a van.
By the way, he's in his 60s now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
70s?
Probably is, let's see, that was in
Well, how old are you?
2005.
40? 45?
Oh, thank you. I'm as old as you are.
No, then. I know,
So
then.
let's see. I would
45?
have been about 45. Yeah.
Okay, so he's probably 65 to 70.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more like
So here he
47.
is back in the 70s. He was rolling a Lincoln Continental Mark V, and now he's rolling a minivan. What'd you do with your money, Berchtold? Did you spend it on, tricking little girls. I mean, poetic justice there. So here's my
Well,
point.
there's no
One of
justice
those
there.
Baka
None of
guys
this is
jumps on
no
his,
justice.
like on his hood, and he's grabbing onto the windshield or whatever, grabbing onto the, windshield wipers. Bertchold hits the skids. The guy falls off in front of it, hits. He gets arrested for that, and that's what does him in. He realizes if he goes to prison, he's going to be the low man on the totem pole,
Yep.
and those guys are going to kill him.
Yep.
I mean, or he will wish he's dead. Because, I mean,
Yep.
prisoners, if there's one thing they respect, they may not respect their girlfriends or their wives, but they respect children.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have children, and they are going to respect that. And this guy is not going to make it a week. So, um, here's the way what I'm going to I'm to that. This guy, just because he is so infatuated and he's such a sick dog, he is willing to destroy your parents' marriage. He is willing to destroy your whole family dynamic. He is willing to destroy your childhood, because your childhood was over as soon as you were kidnapped that first time. Your childhood's over,
Yeah. Oh
correct?
yeah. It's over.
Okay, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of us are, still kind of children. You're not. He destroys your coming of age time.
Mm-hmm.
Dates with boys,
Yep.
first kiss,
Holding hands.
dances, and then you finally, Jan Hole got you to go to that dance with her
Cousin.
boyfriend. She told him, I've been talking to
Yeah.
Jan. Her boyfriend's brother or cousin or something.
Cousin.
Can't remember. I
Yep.
think cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, he does all of that to you, destroys. He doesn't care about your, destroying your future. My God, you were about to kill your sister.
Yeah.
You know, he was possibly going to kill your father.
Yep.
He was possibly going to, um, yeah, he doesn't care about your father's business. All of that.
Yeah. Not to
So how do I say
mention,
this? To get his rocks off. All of that for
it's
that.
just,
I mean,
it's really
he's a
sad.
disgusting human being.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't even done. He wasn't even done when you came of age.
Oh no, and the thing is that I didn't, I was such a late bloomer, so to speak. I
Exactly.
was still what, 5'1" and 90 pounds when I graduated from high school. And I didn't start my period till like 2 months before I graduated. So I was 17 and
Yes.
turning 18 the summer after graduation, and then trying to kind of catch up because now I'd had a year and a half, and I told Caroline and Karen, and I kind of told my parents, but I couldn't talk about the icky stuff. I just went on. You go on with your life, and the beautiful part is he didn't destroy all of those things, that the resilience of my family members. He could have, even with Karen and Susan. I mean, the way he treated them so affected their lives, especially with Karen in her, not being like the chosen one. Even though she knows she was lucky, it still was like this mind, you know, I can't think of the right word to say, so I don't swear, but it was like this mental, um, you know, war zone that he caused, and but none all of us that were hurt and harmed by him, by having, your sister missing, by having all of the focus on the kidnapping and being alone in your home, even though you had wonderful parents, all the focus was over here trying to find Jan. All of the other things, it's why survivors and their family members or their partners need a community or some place to heal, to talk about what happened, because sexual abuse and trauma doesn't just affect the survivor, it affects everyone in the family: parents, children, brothers, sisters. And I just, I hope that my work as I go forward and what I'm doing now actually catches fire. I hope that I have millions of people that join my online community. Thrivivors is the name of it. And I established that because I know that the things that are missing for a survivor is to have a safe place to tell your stories, have your worst day, have your breakthrough days, have other people who understand and won't judge you and will believe you and not blame you for what happened.
Yes.
It's just missing. And so, because so many people never have the satisfaction of having their rapist, put into incarcerated and then left there. They don't have that. It doesn't happen for so many who have been through this kind of abuse. They need somewhere to heal. They need some way to heal. And I believe it's just like AA, where if you're an alcoholic and you can come to a meeting and be in recovery and you can have milestones, you get your chip and then you get your cake and you get on that path,
Yes.
that's tremendously helpful. Well, 25% of the world needs a group. They need that kind of thing, and that's what my Thrivivors, online community is for, and also the podcast that I'm doing, like with you today, is so that we can reveal these stories. People can tell their stories, and experts that that know how to help, that know what's going on can come on this podcast and give us hope, give us healing modalities. I've developed a program for healing that I know. These are the 12 transformational breakthroughs that I had in my life that literally changed my life from one that could have been a complete disaster to a life that I am proud of, that I love, to having relationships and, all the things that you want in life. You want to have, and I didn't do it all perfectly. I've been married and divorced 4 times. It's not like I figured it out fast enough. My poor son had to suffer through a lot. That's the intergenerational trauma that gets passed on, is because you haven't figured out how to heal. So trauma gets passed on because of the things that you have to go through. But now that I've come this far, I have been able to identify the steps, literally like a 12-step program of how you can heal, that your brain can be healed, the neural pathways can be restructured, your central nervous system can heal, your emotional pieces can heal, your sexual pieces can heal. All the things that were hurt and harmed, they can be healed. It takes work, real work. It's not just, oh, I want to, and then it happens. It
Right.
takes work, but it can happen. And so that's really the hope that I hope to be for people. I told my story to help other people. I want to do that
Absolutely.
as much as I can. And I appreciate you pointing out what could have happened and it didn't.
Yes, absolutely. So I was thinking, how some of the players in your story, how what it looked like to me, and you can tell me if kind of this is how you saw it too. Uh, so here's some of the people involved. First of all, Jerry's uncle, Joe Bertchold. I mean, good job. He's the one that actually found out you were in Mazatlan, right?
Yeah, he took the phone call.
And I remember hearing him on the one of the on the Abducted in Plain Sight, saying something like, I thought he was going to kill me. I would have thought, let him try.
Yeah.
Give you, I don't see how anybody would be too afraid, But you can't be afraid of you have to be afraid of a crazy man,
Yep.
and that's exactly what Robert Bertchold was.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yep.
Gail Bertchold, I think she was totally trapped. I think she was totally trapped. I think when she came to your parents and, was
Me too.
involved in the blackmail, she's totally trapped. What's she going to do? Raise 5 kids by herself as a woman in Pocatello, Idaho in the mid 1970s?
Right.
I think she just wished every day that this crap would end,
Hmm.
but she was trapped. Uh, and hats off to the actress in the 8-part series, by the way, who played her so well
Wasn't she
as the,
phenomenal?
kind of stressed out, frumpy, I don't want to say much about Gail, but, good woman.
Yeah.
Obviously, whoever your actress was an absolute gorgeous young woman. I don't know who it is, but
Her name's
and she
Leo, and
played
she was
that. She
amazing. Leo
played that
Tipton.
stressed out housewife to a T.
Yep. And the
Jerry,
grappling like between those two worlds, like what do I know or what do I think I know, but I don't
yes,
want to know, and how do I these are my friends, but this is my husband, and if I don't have him, how do I raise my kids? I mean, she had all those.
all
She
of
was
them.
great.
Can you imagine?
They
I
were all
mean, her
great.
hell. I mean, yeah, Gail Bertchold's. You know, nobody went through more hell than you did, but Gail, everybody he came in contact with
Yeah.
went through hell. His own children. I mean, I don't know, but I didn't think he had any daughters, and I hope that Gail got her away from him at a very early age. Because I mean, I mean, there's free reign.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, are you
that's
kidding?
he used his daughter to tell the other little girl that he was doing his worst to. If you don't do this, I'll have to do this to Jill. So I don't know if he ever touched
Oh,
any of
okay.
his
You
kids.
did tell me that. You're
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So they may still think that
Let
he was a great guy. They may just not even believe any of this. I don't know. I really
right.
don't. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to any of them, even though I've tried. Just hasn't they
Okay.
haven't wanted to talk about it or about these projects with us.
So then next up, Jerry Birch told,
Mm,
how my really good friend, fifth and sixth, seventh grade.
yeah.
I mean, I think he was trapped. I think he was completely embarrassed. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, for sure.
through no fault of his own.
Exactly. All the
And he's
lies.
being used too.
Yep.
Oh, I think, Jan Hull and I were talking about this. Oh, if you don't go to the Seattle trip with us, Jerry's going to be so sad and all this.
Yep. I'll just
Using
cancel
his
the trip.
son as a pawn. I'll cancel the trip.
Yep. Yeah. That makes me sick.
Okay, here's one. Tell me what you think about how I'm feeling here. Mormon church leaders
Yeah.
in the 70s, in your day, in my day, which we would have no, but the Mormon church is it's a non-paid clergy.
Right.
So you've got people doing things, these men that are doing these jobs that are not equipped to deal with somebody like Robert Berchtold.
No.
So he is actually, I don't know if he's excommunicated at one point in 1974, I hear. I can't remember what the documentary said. So, the church is all about forgiveness. We need to forgive, we need to forgive, we need to forgive. And not just the Mormon church, but all
Yeah.
churches were this exact same way. The fact that you could run into a church and have sanctuary, you know, and I was actually in a bishopric at one point. This has been a long time ago, 26 years or so ago, and I remember them coming out with deals saying, if someone ever does anything criminal, which Berchtold did, we are not going to keep that a secret from the law or anything else, which is good
Yes. Oh,
because there's
absolutely.
criminal. I mean, there's sins against your God that aren't criminal, but
Right.
if it's criminal, we are going to say something
We
to the
have to
authorities.
report. It's
So
mandatory to
don't
report.
don't tell you don't want to. Basically, if you tell us, we're not keeping it a secret for you. So that what Berchtold did, if you tried it now, and they actually knew about it, your story may not have happened, which
Right.
would have been good.
Yes.
So, when I don't know which one it was. I think it was the 8-part series, maybe, or maybe it was the documentary on the 8-part series, Friend of the Family.
Yeah.
Anyway,
When they were showing the various like church scenes and excommunications and disciplinary actions by the church, I
right.
do think it was quite a very big difference in the 70s because of those things you just said. And because people really can't go back in their minds and realize, because they weren't there, maybe they don't remember, but we didn't even have child abuse laws. Those didn't
No,
start to happen until the mid 70s. They were being passed on a federal level, but the states had to adopt those laws and then decide, how are we going to punish people who, do this or that to their kids, who fit. It was mostly based around physical abuse, but there were laws coming, but they weren't even in place. And so
right,
then you don't even have therapy, because people are just starting to go, wait, what's happening to kids? Will they need to have somebody to talk to about that? Therapy is a brand new field. It's not even 10 years old in the 70s. It started, people were starting to go to, universities and have programs and become psychotherapists, but we
correct,
didn't even know PTSD was a real thing until
right,
1989. Then we started to have programs for combat veterans that focused around PTSD. Well, it's the same kind of trauma that children who are abused, groomed, brainwashed, raped, it's the same kind of PTSD, only for the child, for the young person. They don't know who the enemy is. It's a caretaker, it's a friend, it's their parent. And yet the combat veteran knows the enemy, and they have the same kinds of outcomes and problems because of what happened to them in the whole PTSD realm that young people do as adults who were traumatized as children. And we don't even fund that kind of stuff. Do you know how expensive it is to get a therapist to do EMDR work, to reprogram your brain? It should be completely funded so that we can do it. Anybody who has been through this kind of trauma and suffered this kind of post traumatic stress and all the symptoms of it should be able to have access to the healing practices that we know scientifically actually heal the brain. Those things that we could have access to so that we don't go through four divorces and alcoholism and addiction and cutting ourselves and anorexia and bulimia. I mean, in 1982, 2 years after I graduated from high school, they're treating women with these disorders that look like rage and pain and suffering and can't function, that stemmed from child abuse. They don't know that. They don't even talk to them about it. They're treating them with electric shock therapy
in
in
1982,
1982.
it's ridiculous.
So I think people have to realize that we have made great strides, like with, you know, mandatory reporting. And at least in the Mormon church, it's that's what it says. And again, we still have unpaid, clergy, they're volunteers, they aren't highly trained. They are supposed to call the police, but they also call the church's legal system, the church's attorneys and stuff. And a lot of times I think things like this are still settled out of court, and we don't really know who the predators are because they do keep it quiet. And that has to change too, because people who have gone through this, whether it's a family member or it's the child, they need support. I know that our stake president was somebody who called my parents and said, gosh, I knew something was wrong with that guy and I should have done more. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I should
Yeah,
have done, you know?
yes, and again, I mean, it's other churches would keep things secret too.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
That
it's
whole
not just us.
sanctuary stuff,
Yeah.
but if it's criminal, you have to,
Report it.
and now I believe, and now they do.
For the most part. Yes.
Okay, yes, okay, you may have some that don't, but they certainly should. Okay, another player, your mother. Sure, she made mistakes.
Yep.
They weren't criminal,
Nope.
and I just I got the feeling uh, the
The
documentaries
first
that
one.
she hasn't forgave herself.
No,
And
she's
it's been
still.
50 years,
Yeah.
So, it's and easy for me to, be on the outside looking in saying, it's to the just let it go. It's to the point now. Just let it go. Okay. I mean, and your dad. I mean, again, what did he? The biggest mistake he made was being too nice.
Yep.
You know, being too nice.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and then we've talked about the Birch told himself. I don't think he had any does never had any love for anyone but himself in his life.
Yeah, he was a true
He would throw
narcissist.
away his true narcissist would throw away his whole family. He's
Yep.
completely compromised. Um,
Yeah, he was
you
leaving them.
know,
He was leaving them forever. He wanted to get me to South America. He was never coming back. And when you really think about that, you're like, he was literally walking out the door on his whole family. Whether he would have eventually contacted somebody and said, "Oh, I'm here, but now I'm with Jan Broberg." I mean, it
and
just,
this was about
uh,
the second kidnapping time. Is that correct, Jan?
well, yeah, but even the first kidnapping, he was leaving, and his point in going into Mexico was trying to get me to South America because that was the threat that he said to my mom and dad. If you don't just let me marry her so that I can come back to the United States, if because that was his whole thing. I'm only marrying her because if she's my wife, then I can come back to the United States. If I,
Correct.
right? So he had a story for everything. But he said, and if you don't let me do that, I'm going to take her into South America and you will never see her or I again. I think he was totally telling the truth. He was willing to leave all of his own
Yeah.
children. It's just so sad and awful.
Yes.
Psychopath.
So yeah, absolutely. He was very smart in some of his criminal work, but he was very stupid too at the same time on some of the things he did.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so, just a few things, I mean, your story is, I remember thinking, she's got to tell this story. I mean, I remember thinking this, I don't know, like mid 80s,
Yeah.
she's got to tell this story. It's so crazy that it's just, and I was thinking, I hope she makes a movie someday. I hope she makes millions of dollars off this. She
Oh,
deserves it. I mean,
I'm
are you kidding? She's gone through so much hell. She did, I mean,
Thank you,
and the millions
Brian.
of dollars wouldn't even come close to what you deserve. You know what I'm saying?
Thank
Because I
you.
mean, money, money buys happiness, and money does not buy happiness. But not having money certainly didn't buy any happiness. We know that.
Oh yeah.
Not having money.
It's hard, and I really have not made hardly any money on all of these efforts that I've done. I
Yeah,
It's really interesting because people that's the one thing that a lot of people will still say, like, "Well, how much did you get paid? And did how gross to tell your story and exploit other people's stories for money." And I'm like, I haven't really made any money. I mean, I made a little bit with but just only like 10% off that first documentary, and it I mean, it wasn't even like what I would consider. I've always lived on a salary of somewhere between 50 and $60,000 a year my whole life. I mean, that's the it used to be 30 to 40, and then maybe it went 40 to 50, and 50 to $60,000 has
understand.
always been my deal. I've never had a year beyond that. And
Right,
so that little bump that I got from that, it amounted to, 30 or $40,000 over the course of the last few years. It didn't amount to millions of dollars, and neither did the series. I got paid for my story, but all of the money, that $150,000, went back into the podcast that I'm doing, into publishing the new book and getting it rewritten and paying for the copies to be printed. It went into the online community and all the platforms and all the people that I pay to help me run some of these things. I still haven't made anywhere near that kind of money
right,
ever. And I'm
right,
like, I really
exactly.
did do it because I wanted to help people. And so
Uh,
I
you
just
bet
get
you did.
so confused why people think that it's it's like I don't know. That's the one that really bothers me, I guess. I've gotten over it being bothered about, oh, your stupid parents, or, oh, you were so dumb believing in aliens and saving a dying planet, whatever the other things that they've said. I've gotten
Yes,
over, but that one really bothers me because, first of all, I haven't made a lot of money. I'm still struggling. I need people to
right.
donate to the foundation so we can have a summit and we can actually change laws, and we can actually pay for people to have the therapies that they need. That's it. I don't know. I'm a nonprofit and I
Yes,
need people to help because there isn't money in telling documentary type of stories. There just isn't. And
okay,
selling
yes,
books. We've sold, I don't know, 600 copies of the book. That's not enough, you know?
right.
It just,
So Bertchold, Bertchold accuses you when you get your restraining order or
yeah.
your,
He did the same thing. That's what made me mad.
yeah, he's like, oh yeah, so yeah, are you trying to make a lot of money off this?
Yeah.
Well, I may make some money off this. Anybody can tell their story and make money. How about you tell your story and make money?
Yeah, he probably
Why don't
could
you
have.
tell yours, Berchtold?
Yeah.
You know how much of a sick SOB you've been for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell your story?
Yeah.
That's what I want you to do. But of course, he's never going to do that. He's always the victim.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Broberg, I was abused as a child. I was, they kept me out in the barn and all this, crap, which may or may not have been true. Who
Yeah.
knows? Probably not.
Yeah.
It's just every time he opens his mouth, it's probably a lie.
Yep.
And your story is it's unequaled. I was talking to Jan Hold a little bit earlier today, and this is unequaled. I mean, if Stephen King and Alfred Hitchcock got together, they couldn't come up with something together to beat your real story. It's so crazy.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's so it's just it's
It's
it's unequaled.
it's
It
weird to be
really
it
is.
is very weird to be the person who grew up in such a normal, safe Camelot type of community to go, I really survived a true crime story that is really one of those, like, up in the top, 10 or
Oh,
whatever. It's
yes.
weird. It's a weird position to be
Yes,
in.
absolutely.
I hope that many people will know too that, as I do speaking engagements around the country, I do those because I get to meet with individuals in that room and get to stay after and hear their little story while I sign a book, or they just want to tell me their story so I can give them a hug and take a picture with them. That I really want to stand for hope, and that there is possibility in healing, and that we can change laws and we can use science and clinical modalities to actually heal people. I really want people to know that's possible. So that's what I want to leave
I'm sure.
everybody
Yeah,
with.
good for you. I'm really proud to know you. I'm really, you're. This is great work.
Thank you,
What you're
Brian.
doing.
Thank you
You're
so much
welcome.
for being on the podcast today. I really
Very
appreciate
welcome.
it. All right, we're gonna end this session and see what happens when people hear the truth from a friend of the Berchtolds and our family in the same neighborhood. It's gonna be genius. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Have a good night.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you for sharing this journey with me today. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show. This really helps us spread the word. And if you know someone who would benefit from listening to our show, please do me a favor and share one of our episodes with them. I want every survivor to know that they are not alone and that there is help available. Links to my website, our foundation, the new book, our online community, Thrivivors, and newsletter can be found in the show notes. All of my contact info is there as well. This year, my number one focus is on sharing our stories. This is so important because it's the launching pad to our healing journey, and it inspires the survivor who is still suffering in silence. I don't want anyone to suffer alone anymore. So please reach out. I want to hear from you. Until next time, my friends, this is Mama Jan signing off. Over and out on 2. Bye-bye.